Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over the best decks post Photon Hypernova. I'm also going to be including the deck list as well, so you can get a general idea of what I have made already. So you guys can, maybe take some inspiration from that as you build your own deck list. I think the best three decks post Photon Hypernova are going to be the Kashtira deck that just recently got more support, the Tearlaments deck. Of course, we're still in a tier 0 meta, as you would call it, but I think after Photon Hypernova, it's not necessarily tier 0 because there are two other decks that can compete with Tearlaments, I believe, and that's going to be the Kashtira deck that I mentioned already, as well as the Floowandereeze deck, or the Flu Stew Goo. But yeah, let's jump right into it and go over the deck list. The deck first that I'm going to be talking about is the Kashtira deck. So right here is a sample deck list that I made that I would say is pretty solid. I maxed out all of the really good Kashtira monsters, so 3 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn. These are the ones that we previously had before, and the new card that just recently came out is Riseheart. So I've been noticing that some people have been playing 2 in their lists, but I do think 3 is definitely the correct number, just because it's one of your extenders that you really want to open. I play the Scarecrow Cash because it's a really good out to Baguska. If someone Baguskas you, you have cards like, basically any Kashtira monster plus Papyrus, as well as Pyresos. With Terraform, you can search Scarecrow Cash, and this monster can attack while it's in defense. So if your opponent Baguskas you, then you can still attack, which is pretty solid. I also play the Tearlaments Kashtira. The reason why I play this card is because there are some certain situations in which you want to stack up to 3 materials on a Riseheart as you pass your turn, because it plays around triple tactics and change of heart way better. And this card is basically a way to stack 2 cards on a Riseheart. The first one off the effect when to summon itself when it banishes a Kashtira monster. And the second one is when it mills 3, but under a Riseheart, the mills are actually banished instead, which will trigger a Riseheart for the second time to attach 2 cards essentially. 3 Shifter, obviously, probably one of the most absurd hand traps we have in the game. 3 Ash Blossom, just because in the mirror match, I think Ash on Papyrus is very powerful, because it's really hard to extend past that. They need Birth, or they need basically Birth to keep going with another combo piece such as Fenrir or Riseheart. So if they go special summon Unicorn and you Ash your Papyrus, they need to also have access to Birth plus Unicorn to keep playing. So they need, basically a 4-card, no, technically a 3-card combo to beat Ash Blossom on Papyrus at least. Scarecrow, you play Terraforming set rotation with Necro Valley just so that you have more starters. I just don't want to break playing these type of decks. When you resolve your combo going first, you should be in a really good position. But I basically wanted to play Necro Valley because it gives you set rotation access, which is another starter for the deck, as well as being a good disruption. What's really cool about set rotation is that you can actually end up banishing the field spell that you give to your opponent face down, which will trigger a Riseheart an additional time, as well as lock an additional zone with the Shangri-La, which is pretty sweet. 3 of the planet for Kashtira's, 3 of the Papyrus, which is one of their best extenders that just got announced as support. 3 Birth. I think you just have to play this card at 3. I've been seeing some lists with playing it at 2 or even 1. But I think this is one of the best extenders the deck can have. And under Shifter, a lot of your cards will get banished. So even under Necro Valley, you're able to reborn monsters from your banish pile. Birth is really good. It gives you basically 2 extra bodies, because you get 1 from the normal summon and 1 from the reborn effect. And also, a lot of people forget that the second effect is also very powerful, which is if your opponent activates a spell card or a card effect, and you control a Kashtira monster, you're able to target 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard and banish them face down. This is really cool because versus cards like Tearlaments Scream, if your opponent activates Tearlaments Scream's effect and their turn player, on resolution, they can activate their tier effects, and you will be, because you're not turn player, your Birth will go as Channeling 2 on the resolution of Scream to banish the cards that they're using in their graveyard, which is basically having Birth up on the field means that you can nullify your opponent's Scream when you're going first, and they have to go second into your board, which is, I think, might be relevant if you get hand trapped. Big Bang, which is the trap that is an extender when it's banished by targeting a Kashtira monster and then summoning a Kashtira monster attached to your Kashtira XYZ. And it has the first effect too, which is actually pretty neat, which is if a Kashtira XC monster is on the field, you basically make it so both players banish monsters from the field face down so they can only control one. That effect can definitely be super relevant because it can help you lock an additional zone with Shangri-La, and it also, like, you know, clear all your opponent's bodies. So definitely a really, really good card. Typically, the way you use this card is you would banish it off of Rise Art, and then if you have access to Scareclaw Cache or Tear Cache, you can banish the Papyrus from your graveyard to summon them, and then use Papyrus when it's banished to add back a banish Kashtira card in the form of like Kashtira Big Bang. You can also attach this off of Rise Art, and then use the Rise Art's effect to attach it, which will get banished for cost, and still, you know, trigger it multiple times. So some of my non-engine slots besides Shifter and Ash are going to be Impermanence, Pot of Prosperity, Book of Eclipse, and Change of Heart. I didn't know what the last slot I wanted to be is, but, you know, I think the Change of Heart will make sense. And so it's like very good in the mirror. Going second to most decks, it will always bait out one interruption. It's just always consistently good without your opponent having to activate a monster effect yet. And I think post side, I play cards like Thrust, which allows you to get access to Talents and Mind Control as well, which is extremely good in the mirror match, being able to take your opponent's cards. And I think that's gonna be like pretty solid. So post in the side deck, I play one Zombie World because you play Thrust, and Thrust, if Thrust can get you access to like a pointer. I probably should add a Metaverse in here because if your opponent hand traps you with either Ash, actually Imperm wouldn't work, but like I guess it would only be specifically Ash against the Floowandereeze deck that will allow you to set Metaverse. But I don't think post side the Floowandereeze deck will side shifter into this deck, so that's why I decided not to play Metaverse. But I think you have also a copy of Set Rotation and Terraforming, so technically you have 3 copies of Zombie War post side alongside 3 Power P, which will, you know, dig for what you need here. Yeah, Book of Eclipse is a pretty neat card, but post side I wanted more cards for the mirror match, so I just have Talents and Mind Control with tasking. Just because if your opponent activates a Shangri-La in standby phase, you can activate Talents, or you can activate Mind Control or Change of Heart. Search both, one or the other, and then take their a Rise Heart, and then now like you have access to their Rise Heart, and that's like, in my opinion, super powerful. Let's see. Next, you have Double Evenly Match. Like I said, it's basically with tasking, you can search Evenly Match. So even though I'm only playing 2, I technically have 5 copies with tasking, going second into boards. 3 Ibly, 3 Judgment, and Lotus going first. That's kind of like the card I'm choosing to set off of tasking, because I think if I can look at my opponent's hand in the draw phase, I can play around effectively anything, and I can decide whether or not I want to use my Shangri-La, you know, in case they have cards like tasking or something like that. So I just think a pointer is really good because you can basically look at your opponent's hand, and even though it went to 1, you know, Thrust will give us access to it more consistently. And yeah, Ibly is basically like a way to go first to play around like Nibiru, so it does protect against Nibiru. But the thing is, a lot of people, even myself, in recent tournaments have played a double Lingaribo to compensate for this, and that's why I have it 2 in the side deck as well, or 2 in my extra deck as well. And then the rest of the extra deck is quite standard. So double Zeus, double Rise Heart, double Shangri-La, mainly just because of Diablosis, 1 Diablosis, double Big Eye, Flare, 1 Draco Sack, double Lingaribo, Donor to out Floodgates. It requires 2 monsters with different types, which I think is pretty nice. And it pops itself, so you can clear your main monster zone to keep special summoning Kashtira monsters. And then 1 Goliath to banish off Pot of P, so you can attach it off of a Rise Heart. And if you guys didn't know, if an XC monsters whose original type is Machine has this card as a material, the monster cannot be destroyed by card effect. So it makes it so that Shangri-La is protected already, right, from Raigeki Dark Hole, because of the fact that because of its continuous effect, which is if this card on the field would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can attach 1 material instead. But you can also attach 1 to a Rise Heart, and that's going to be very powerful because now they cannot even, like, you know, some people will side Dark Hole Raigeki, and now like that won't work against a Rise Heart, especially if you have access to Goliath. I just think it's like a neat protection. It's also really important because in the Kashtira mirror match, they cannot use their Paraisos to basically pop your Rise Heart now. So it's like, you know, they have to out this, and it's really, really difficult to out 3,000 in the Kashtira deck, in my opinion. So, yeah. So there's that for Kashtira deck. I would give a pause here to say if you guys are enjoying the content so far, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts below on what changes you would make to the Kashtira deck that you see that I have, as well as if you would like to see more videos like these. Next, let's talk about the Tearlament deck. So this is like one of the Tearlament decks that I was working on, and this is one of the deck that I actually played in one of the Grim Yugioh online tournament that was for post Photon Hypernova. As you can see here, I maxed out the Ishizus because I think that if people are playing decks like Flu or Kashtira and they don't draw Shifter, if you go first and resolve the mill 5 against their deck, it should be pretty much game. And I think like if you can mill 10 against those decks, you have a pretty substantial advantage in the fact that you can actually pretty much read what cards they have in their hand based on the cards they mill. And the rest of the engine is pretty much standard, you know, 3 Hovness, double tier cash. I think this should be probably a 3 of if you cut the Rhino. I've been experimenting with 2 and 3 right now, but I do think that at some point this card will probably be a 3 of. 3 Merly, 3 Rhino, 3 Sharon, 1 Instant Fusion, Triple Planet. So Super Poly is one of the cards I think it's really good, especially if you play 6 Ishizus, then mills 5, because it's a way to trigger that. It also punishes people and it makes Dweller Rukalos in the mirror match, which, you know, a lot of people just do that subconsciously without really thinking about it. So I think maining this card puts your opponent in an interesting predicament in which they have to always consider about Dweller Rukalos and the impact of that. But even another cool application of Super Poly is the fact that, like, if your opponent does make Dweller, if you summon a tier cash on your opponent's turn, you can actually Super Poly the tier cash on your opponent's Dweller in draw phase, which I think could actually be pretty cool before they get to use Dweller using your priority. So this card might be good. I'm playing 1 Scream, 1 Terraforming, 3 Triple Tactics Talent. I think this card is better than Thrust in Tearlaments. So I wanted to try this card because if people play Bystials, then it's like really good against that. Going second into most decks, be able to take your opponent's card is like really powerful. And yeah, I think like if you notice, like the way I built this deck is I'm committing to more of a board breaker approach with the deck, and so I was trying to find cards that helps you break boards. And the only card I can think of that could works both first and second is Tactics. Maybe if you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comments below. And cards like Super Poly had the same purpose. It's both good first or second, and it has dual purpose in both the Kashtira matchup as well as the Tier Mirror, because against the Kashtira matchup you can Super Poly their Diablosis and a Rise Heart for a Mud Dragon, and that's also like really powerful. And then 3 Impermanence, just because I think it's just a standard generic card. You can arguably just cut this card and play 40 cards as well. But I like Impermanence because going second into the Kashtira board, if you Imperm their Arise Heart, which is their Macrocosmos, you can use Keldo plus Kelback or Gito to mill 5, and then search Kelback off the Keldo. And because your opponent milled 5 from their deck, you can actually Kelback their Shangri-La and basically Zeus them and clear the whole board. So that was definitely so that's like one of the considerations I had, which I thought maybe Imperm is good. And it's just like I said, it has dual purpose across multiple matchups, and that's why if the format is pretty I think the format is, I'm not really sure where it's gonna be headed, because a lot of people will want to play the new cards. And as a result, I just wanted cards that will work against multiple matchups, especially across long rounds of Swiss. So I think Imperm fits that slot pretty nicely. In my side deck, I have Book of Eclipse for the Kashtira matchup. I side deck Crime for going first. I was trying out Green Light and Orange Light with Kurikara, because Kurikara is a fairy, and Orange and Green can actually pitch the Kurikara. So that was something that I also wanted to try. Honestly, I never actually drew this card, but I just thought that if I'm already playing 6 of the Ishizus, the mill 6 or the mill 5s, then maybe this card could be really good, because against the Kashtira matchup, when they activate Papyrus, if you read it, it actually has a use clause, which means that if you negate the activation of Papyrus, they cannot activate another copy of it. And you also are able to mill 5 from the Gito or the Kelback on resolution, and that basically lets you play on your opponent's turn as much as possible. So I think that could be pretty neat. I mean, Orange Light is just Orange Light. Kirk Carroll was a card that I was testing, and it was a card that I wanted to try out. It's more fairies for Orange and Green Light, like I mentioned before, and it also might be kind of decent, even in like the mirror match. But I think the card overall like was very okay for me, so I didn't really like it that much. We have 3 Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. This was a card that I was trying to side deck, and honestly, this card wasn't that good for me, to be quite honest. I was originally playing this card just because I thought that it would hit the mirror match pretty well, because I noticed that people weren't playing Crime. And so I didn't really put in other targets for other decks, mainly only the mirror. Because I feel like if people aren't playing Crime, then I think this card gets more value, since I see most people playing Sulik and Metanoise and just cutting Crime completely. But if people decide to keep playing Crime, then I don't think this card is as good. But also, like, a lot of people aren't playing Bystials and Beatrice, so because of Thrust. So as a result, it's really hard for your opponent to get access to Beatrice to send the Crime to add back the kit. Because one of the lines that you would do to beat Reaper is you would make a Garua, and if you have access to a Bystial, you would overlay them for Beatrice, detach the Garua, send the Crime, add back the Kit Kalos, and then try to use your second and third fusions on Kit and Ruka, or like Kit and Kaleido, right? But it was something I wanted to try, just, you know, as an experiment to see like how people react to, you know, the new Tactics card, which may affect a lot of people's deck building. So in theory, this card could be really, really good. But I've only played 1 tournament with it, or 2 tournaments with this deck. And I won the first one, and the second one I lost in the second to last round, and I didn't make top cut. And then Scattershot is just, you know, a nice level 2 extender. In terms of the extra deck, 1 Garua. I probably should play the second Mud Dragon, because if later into the tournament people find out that you're playing Super Poly, they might banish your Mud Dragon off Diablosis. So I think I'm probably going to cut the Beatrice, because it's really hard to make that card, and just play the second Mud Dragon in my extra deck. That was one of the considerations that I thought about as I was playing the tournament, that if people kind of catch on and I play against some of the better Kashtira players, they might realize that. And I think the second Mud Dragon would be pretty useful with Super Poly in the main deck. Zepelia, Kaleido are pretty much, you know, standard. Double Kit Kalos because of Diablosis, 1 Ruka, double Zeus for the same reason, 1 Dweller, 1 Redoer, Dark Elf, and Sprint. As you can see here, one of the cards that I don't have is Baguska, and the main reason is because I think the Kashtira deck has a really efficient out to it in the form of Scareclaw Cash, and if you get shifted, which is when Baguska comes up, because then, you know, you don't go for your full board, you just go for like a rank 4 and you pass, especially when you get shifted. They can summon a Scareclaw Cash and just attack over it in full combo in main phase 2. And I was very, very, you know, like, at least in my testing, that seems to be the case. So I just decided not to play Baguska at all as a result of that. I think Redoer is very generic across multiple matchups. But there's some people who don't like that card, and I would say that Redoer, if you want to cut it for Baguska, you can definitely try that out. That was like the one card I couldn't find room. I think you do have to play double Mud Dragon, because like I said, once you get deeper into the tournament and people find out that you're playing Super Poly and they're playing Kashtira, which like, they're gonna just definitely banish your Mud Dragon. You could take the gamble and play one Mud Dragon and then play the Baguska, but I don't know if I'm a betting man or a gambling man like that. But that's pretty much my analysis on like the tier deck. Like I said, this is pretty much a sample for you to take a look at. It's what I've been kind of testing so far, and I think hopefully this helps you give some insight and maybe answer some questions you may have. But if you have any additional questions or thoughts about this deck, things you would change, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to respond to them. The last deck is actually the Floo. I know I always joke about playing Floowandereeze, but I had to craft the best Floowandereeze deck that I could, and it was definitely painful, but I enjoyed it a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it was cool to cook up the Floo stew. So here's what I have, right? So pretty much standard, like triple Rabina, Eaglin, Toucan, Shri, 1 barrier, 1 rise, double M pen, Apex, the favorite level 6 monster in the game, Dimension Shifter, triple Advent, Terraforming, triple Map, triple Duality, triple Prosperity, 1 Unexplored Winds, and now the non-dungeon slots, because the Flu deck pretty much builds itself for the first 30 cards. Triple Book of Eclipse, I think, is crazy in Floowandereeze, not only because it answers the Kashtira matchup really well. Against the tier matchup, you can pretty much turn off all the back row by booking all their monsters if this card resolves. So they have to like extend with like a tier cache or like a Hovness or something along those lines. So I think this card could be like really nice. The other cool thing about Book of Eclipse is that it's also a way to beat impermanence if you go first. So you can actually just book your own monster. Like if you go first, it's just like a way to protect your monster from getting impermed. So I think going first, it acts as a Book of Moon. And going second helps breaks your opponent board. And I wanted to double down on that because I think Kashtira being a very new deck actually means that I think the room will be filled with more Kashtira players than expected, especially the first event in Y6 Leon or Y6 Mexico City. So as a result, I actually want to play triple Book of Moon because I think if you can Book of Moon their Shangri-La, which locks your zones, you don't really care about a Rise Horse macro effect because all of your Floowandereeze monsters are actually very happily ready to be banished. So that doesn't really matter. And like I said, I think my favorite, one of my favorite non-engine cards in formats where it's kind of undefined-ish, or like if you're not really sure, is Impermanence. It's just a very good all-around card. It covers like pretty much everything. And yep, I think Impermanence is like my only other hand trap. It also serves as a board breaker. If you draw as a 6th card, you can use it to answer, you know, your opponent's cards. And I really wanted to play this card. And then the one Dreaming Town. For the side deck, it's 3 Featherstorm. I mean, what need I say more? it literally says, good luck, have fun, bro. Double Unexplored Winds. I think this card is really good in the mirror match, and having multiple is really good in the mirror, so I wanted to play 2 of this. A second barrier statue for going first, mainly because if your opponent, a lot of people are using Book of Eclipse as a way to side for Kashtira, but they'll also use that card to side against the Floowandereeze matchup. So siding a second barrier statue is really nice because they have to Book of Eclipse you in standby phase, and then in main phase 1 they'll try to play, but you can actually activate Dreaming Town after they try to play, summon Rabina, and summon a second barrier. And I think that could be really, it could be pretty solid and unexpected. So I think this card would be cool. I think a lot of people don't really make Rukalos against Floowandereeze for obvious reasons, since it doesn't really do anything against the Floowandereeze matchup. So I wanted to side Nib going second into the tier matchup, but also going second into the cash matchup. So I think like when side deck cards have multi coverage, you know, they're usually cards that I typically like to add to my deck. And I think Nibru is a really good side deck card for Floowandereeze because it covers both the cash matchup and the tier matchup, as well as random rogue matchups pretty well. And I think no one ever really expects it in Flu. But, you know, going second, there's no restriction for you to activate Nib, since you're not going to be normal summoning birds going second. So I think Nib is a really pretty neat card. And I got this idea, actually, because when I was playing Sword Soul at the regional in Toronto, one of my opponents actually nibbed me. But I actually, you know, I actually knew he had Nib. I was so sure that he, like, since he was a, you know, better Floowandereeze player than the average Floowandereeze person, I was like, his side deck has to be pretty well equipped, and he actually did have Nib, and I did my best to play around it. So yeah, I thought to myself, wow, Nib is actually a pretty sweet card in Flu. The next couple cards are basically cards like Storm and Duster. I think those cards are really good because Lightning Storm answers all of like the tiers back row, and I think those back row is what gives you a lot of trouble, in my opinion. It's also like multi-purpose into the mirror match to have Lightning Storm. And then 3 Cosmic Cyclone and Duster mainly for Zombie World. Like, you know, one of the biggest ways his deck loses is basically just get Zombie World. So you have to side Cosmic Cyclone going first, in my opinion, because if you don't have a way to answer the Zombie World going you know, when you go first, you pretty much auto lose the matchup. And so I decided to play 3 Cosmic and 1 Duster, even though, you know, just so I wanted to play 3 Storm, 3 Dust, 3 Cosmic, But I realized like Duster can be sided going first when you have a board already, and because you play cards like field spells in your deck, Duster is better than Storm to go first with, because it doesn't have any requirements. And then the extra deck is pretty much just like stuff that like comes up against Flu. I know Floowandereeze doesn't typically use their extra deck, but I think it's important to still have a pretty solid extra deck built. So the first one is, I guess, Elf, Codebreaker, Donor, Wind Charmer, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn, Access Code, Double Zeus, Gustav Max, which I thought was pretty funny if you overlay 2 M-Pens together to inflict 2,000 damage. I think this card is a meme, but I just thought it'd be funny when I was like trying to like theory. Gigantic Sprite, because you can like because of the fact that you can either use the Wind Charmer to take one of their monsters, basically any wind monster, and then make Elf, and then Elf back the Wind Charmer and overlay for Gigantic, so that you can essentially get to a Zeus line. 2 Nightingale, 1 Thrush, and then 1 Downer Magician. 2 Zeus. Two Zeus, just because I think this is like one of like the best cards in your extra deck, and it might just come up in the grind game to have a second one against like the what do you call it, against the Kashtira matchup. I don't think you will like need to use it, but in case the Kashtira deck zombie worlds you when they go first, they'll Diablosis your Zeus for sure. And if your only out is to make a Nightingale line, then you definitely need a second Zeus, and I just don't want to risk you not having it. I think as a result, I'm probably going to cut the Gustav Max to play a second Downer as well. I don't want them to banish the Downer, so I only get a 3-man Zeus. So that's probably what's going to be instead. But yeah, I pretty much just showed you guys the 3 best decks and my thoughts on them. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, my thoughts on the meta post Photon Hypernova. If you want to see the other decks that I actually had planned, let me know in the comment section below, and what decks you want to see. Some of the decks that I actually looked into for post Photon Hypernova were decks such as Sword Soul, the Sprite deck, and yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.